In the summer of 1916, there were high hopes of the big push, a breakthrough that would end the war. New waves of volunteer battalions, fresh from Britain, joined together with the battle-hardened troops already in France. They converged on the front line north of the river Somme. The army was so confident of a famous victory, censorship was relaxed and the operation was filmed and photographed in detail. The first stage of the plan was to pound the German line for 7 days with the biggest artillery barrage of the war so far. The bombardment was directed along a 16-mile stretch of enemy trenches with, it seemed, devastating effect. On the eve of the attack, the assembled troops were assured the week's intensive bombardment had destroyed the German defences. Such was the confidence of the commanding officers that there would be few Germans left alive. The whole pace of the assault was to be taken slowly. The infantry were to attack in successive waves of long, close-formed lines. This was to be the grandest of all set-piece trench assaults. Amongst those who prepared to go over the top was Arthur Wagstaff, formerly a London messenger boy. He is now 101.
Our instructions were that when you make the attack tomorrow morning, don't run. Walk across. We realised our bombardment would be knocking out those Germans in the front line. So hopefully when we got there, there wouldn't be many there.
The preparations complete, the men were photographed in the trenches, grabbing some rest before their big day. At 7:30 a.m. on Saturday the 1st of July, 1916, 120,000 men who had volunteered and trained for this moment were to go into battle. It was to be the first time over the top for 18-year-old Tommy Gay, a glassblower from London, now aged 100.
I was in one of the first to go over with the lads, and of course we all had a tot of rum, unfortunately, to liven us up, and we all went over the top on our little old run.
I remember our own company sergeant major sitting on the front of the trench and shouting, "Over the top, boys, over the top, but don't run, don't run." So we walked over them.
The bullets, they whizzed by my ears, you know, ping, 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 flying by my ears like that. And I thought, how marvellous, what's the matter that they've missed me? And yet the people were being killed. Oh, it was absolutely startling.
Then we looked along the line and we realised there were very few of us left. Some were left in the trench dead, some were dead on the way over. So we jumped into a very large shallow, 3 or 4 of us, and stayed there for a minute or two because we could see that most of our chaps had been killed.
The men in this film were sheltering in a sunken road and about to go over the top to capture the village of Beaumont Hamel. It was hoped that this footage of soldiers preparing for battle would be a propaganda triumph for the British government. But within minutes the men were dead, mown down by enemy machine gun fire. Fred Francis, now 104, was a miner in Carlisle before joining the 11th Borders, popularly known as the Lonsdale Battalion.
I can remember quite well on our right on the 1st of July, with the Tyneside Scottish and the Tyneside Irish. When I filed out of the wood, the colonel patted me on the back. He said, "Good luck, son." But unfortunately, they were just waiting for us. And they turned all the machine guns on us, and I got a bullet through the hip, and I dropped on my face. I put my steel helmet on the back of my head, and I could hear the shrapnel dropping on my steel helmet.
There were 2 or 3 companies left or right of us, and we couldn't see how they were doing, except that there seemed to be very few about, very few were making the attack now. It was a disaster, really.
When the men arrived back at the advanced dressing stations, the full scale of the disaster began to sink in.
So many of our friends were missing and obviously had been killed or wounded.
I was so pleased to see other people that were still alive, I think that way. When you hear a fellow say, hello matey, give us a bag.
The final roll call revealed many thousands missing. The survivors struggled to understand what had happened to them and to their friends. Tommy Gay could not find his best friend.
From the time we went up over the top, went over together, and I never saw his name was Johnny Jump. Yes, and I never saw him anymore from going over the top with him. Must have had the bullet right away. Yeah. But not one of them had my name on. So I must have been the luckiest man on earth. But to walk over the front with all that machine gun fire, and not one of those bullets got my name on it, I must be the luckiest man on earth. Absolutely the luckiest man in the world.
We realized that we were extremely lucky to have survived because it was a terrific slaughter. But this is why we joined the army. We have got to go forward. We've got to kill the Germans. And in the process, of course, we stand a rough chance of being killed ourselves. It is what we used to say, duty. That's the one word, duty. It's my duty to do this, and this is what I joined up to do, and I must do it.
The Lonsdale Battalion, who started the day with 750 men, suffered some of the worst casualties on the 1st of July. More than 2/3 of its men were killed or seriously injured. 22-year-old Fred Francis's wounds in the leg and the stomach were so bad he was given the last rites. Remarkably, he recovered.
I feel very proud to have served in the Lonsdale Battalion, and I'll never cease to regret that after the 1st of July, the Lonsdale Battalion did not exist.
By the end of the day, 20,000 British troops had been killed and 40,000 wounded. It was the country's worst ever military disaster. The Battle of the Somme continued for a further 4.5 months. There were a few minor gains for the British, but at a terrible cost. 420,000 were killed or wounded. the end of the Somme offensive, the Seaforth Highlanders were part of the successful taking of the village of Beaumont Hamel on the 13th of November 1916. After the battle, 19-year-old junior officer Norman Collins organised the burial of the dead.
I was told to collect the newly killed dead, which I did. I took it was stretcher bearers. Unfortunately, the stretcher bearers, a number of them, they were related to the ones who were dead, and some of them were their brothers, especially the Scottish regiment. We had such a lot of the same name, clan name, you see, MacLean. And they, of course, were very upset.
But also on the battlefield were the old dead, the men killed when trying unsuccessfully to take Beaumont Hamel all those months before on the 1st of July. It had not been possible to bury these dead soldiers until the village had been captured.
The first one I saw, the first one I came across, with his hair growing out of his, still growing from his face. When I touched it, the rats ran out. There was nothing left under the putty except a bone. I just realised then, for me, what death was. A horrible form of death, too. You didn't know them men. They'd been dead for 4.5 months. They were strangers to you. You only knew them as young soldiers and officers who joined the war just as you had. There must have only been around about an average age of about 19 or 20. They'd come over there to do what they thought, no doubt, would be a wonderful job of work. And in one day they were destroyed. You thought then, and then you saw what happened with the rat's nest running out of the cage of the chest. Then you saw all that all happened, and you realised then what their aspirations, their ambitions, and what they were going to do. They were going to put the world right, and they were going to do this and that. And all they did was to die in really a few minutes. Of course, they wouldn't know they were dead, you see. But but for me, who saw what had happened, it seemed to me such a terrible waste of life.
Of the 2 million men who had volunteered to fight for their country in the first year of the war, 150,000 had been killed by November 1916. Their belief that war was a glorious adventure had been proved tragically wrong.
And you can see part 2 of Veterans at the later time of 2:30.